So, most recent episode of ISE has their new fire system on display. It looks really good. There's no denying that. Very impressive stuff, as always, from them. However, when I see that, I think to myself, is this just another layer on top of the challenge that is Multicrew gameplay? And I'm fine with challenges for Multicrew. I don't want it to be easy. I don't want it to be brain dead or anything like that. But I want the juice to be worth the squeeze. So what we have coming so far, because what we have now is nothing for Multicrew, but let's talk about what we have coming. We have engineering gameplay, which is life support, gravity, doors, power routing, and all that stuff. Okay, sounds cool, sounds fun, I'm all about it. We now have the firefighting coming. Okay, sounds cool. We have repairing, so repairing components, replacing components, also sounds cool. And we have turret gunning, whatever, right, turret gunning. Then we have pilot and co-pilot. We have a lot of roles for people to do to make one ship fully functional. One big ship fully functional anyway. But let me ask you this. Do you think that these ships are actually worth that much effort? Do you think, outside of role-playing and LARPing and all this stuff, but in the reality of the game, as it is, and as it is being designed, do you think that adding all these taxes onto Multicrew gameplay is going to help it? Is it going to make it better? Because normally, when you do something like this, you do it to, again, use that word, to tax them, to rein their power in. But right now, there is no power to rein in for these Multicrew ships. They are simply victims and content for smaller single-seat ships. Because as I see it, while you're out there in your Multicrew ship and you're playing, firefighter, and you're playing like Peggle or whatever it is on the power triangle thing and rerouting your power and doing all that stuff, there's a guy out there in a single-seat fighter shooting you, having a good old time. Your turret gunners can't hit. Heck, maybe your turret gunners are out of the turret seats trying to put out fires or change fuses. Either way, they're doing something else. And eventually, that single-seat ship will disable you or destroy you. That is not ideally how a Multicrew experience should work in these games. I know for a fact, I'm not even going to say I think anymore, I know for a fact that a lot of players are in Star Citizen for the Multicrew experience, and they have absolutely no voice. And I'm not sure CIG understands how to fully design or balance not just a fun Multicrew experience, but an effective and powerful Multicrew experience. When you take a bunch of players and you put them into a ship, that one ship should be acting as a force multiplier. You're putting all your eggs in one basket. You're trying to herd all these guys to work together towards a common goal. There has to be a gameplay payoff for that. There has to be a reason to do that. Otherwise, you as a human being are going to take the path of least resistance, which is only natural to you, and you're going to put out as many single-seat fighters, or ships in this case, single-seat ships, that could put out the most amount of firepower with the least amount of group effort. Right now, even in the current state of balance, there's no reason to be in these big ships with a crew. You're always better off, instead of fully crewing and gunning a constellation, for example, you're always better off bringing 4 independent constellations with all of its forward-facing firepower. You don't need the 2 turret gunners, you don't need the co-pilot, and you don't need the snub pilot in the back. Just bring another constellation, or in this case, 4. The same goes for bigger ships like the A2. Why would I ever bother fully crewing that thing, right? When you can have 6 or 7 other A2s dropping bombs, that's a lot of ordnance to drop on a target. And if that's the ship's only purpose, you're better off just bringing as many as possible. How about the Retaliator? Same thing, same concept. The main selling point of the Retaliator are the size 9 torpedoes and how many it can bring. Why would you fully crew that thing instead of bringing just more Retaliators to launch as many size 9s as possible? That's what players are going to do. And you don't want that. You're cheapening the whole game experience by doing that. So the way you prevent that is you put restrictions. For example, with the A2, you do not allow the pilot to drop A2 bombs. Or the Retaliator, you do not allow the pilot to fire torpedoes. People are not going to like that answer because they, and understandably so, want to fly and gun their own ships. But the reason why, and in my opinion, the biggest reason why they don't like that answer that I just gave for putting the restrictions on these big ships to force Multicrew gameplay out of them, is that they just don't perform when you have a crew. They don't do anything. If you were to make these bigger ships, or even any of these crewed ships in general, far more powerful than any single-seat ships equivalent to them, people would suddenly be more willing to do this if they knew that by being in a crewed ship, the only real threat that they have against them is an overwhelming amount, and this is the key word here, an overwhelming amount of single-seat ships or equivalent multi-crew ships. You create a whole different gameplay dynamic when you do this. But in the game's current state, if you were to fill these ships up with gunners and engineers and pilots and every other role imaginable, you are just going to be fodder for smaller single-seat ships. They're going to destroy you. They're going to farm you. There's nothing you can do. You're going to be content for them. So while you're running around in your ship, again, changing fuses and putting out fires, they're just flying around you and having a good old time. But I see these fires and the concept behind them as an opportunity to increase the effectiveness of the multi-crew ships, because we are now again putting that tax on these ships, and we're putting these expectations that in order for this ship to perform, you have to put up with other things. So if the fire is going to be there, which it will be, perhaps SIG is going to buff these ships to be far more powerful and near indestructible against other single-seat ships. That's what I would like to see. I mean, I would like to see ships be never exploded, you know? I mean, that might be kind of an extreme example, but I would like for explosions for ships, even small ships, to be the most rare case. You can't tell me right now that you don't think the game would be a lot better if every ship was ripped apart, falling apart, and eventually just failed and was floating along in space, as opposed to just exploding. By floating along in space, you're allowing for recovery and other emergent gameplay to arise. But also, another topic for another video. Multicrew can be the step for that direction. But unless CIG starts developing these multi-crew ships with the idea and the concept that when crewed, they are far, far more powerful than any single-seat ship equivalent to or below it, we're never going to have a satisfactory experience for the multi-crew ships. I really hate to bring this game up, but Sea of Thieves, whether you're doing PvP or PvE in that game, the multi-crew experience is so much better than Star Citizen. And it's simple, and it's elegant, and it's abstract, but it is so much better. You have damage control, you have cooking, you have navigation, you have combat, you have all these things going on in this, like now, what is it, 8-9-year-old console game, maybe even 10 years old, in this console game. Isn't Star Citizen supposed to be better than that? Isn't Star Citizen supposed to be the most revolutionary space game ever made? Then how come right now, all these years after release, one of the most wanted features for, I would actually argue, the majority of players, I will make that argument, the majority of players is a functioning and fun multi-crew experience? Aren't you just tired of being content for everybody else when you bring your big ship out there? What about you guys in the Reclaimer? What do you have to do? People now try to solo that thing, but realistically, you have to have a bunch of people for it. Is it worth it for you? Is it worth it for you when you're out there with your crew of 5 or 6 guys and you're having fun doing your scrapping gameplay and one guy rolls up on all of you with an inferno and kills you? I don't care about lore. I don't care about reality. Is that fun? Is that balanced? It's probably fun for the inferno. What about the 5 or 6 guys inside that Reclaimer? Probably not very fun for them. What about you guys out there that grabbed the Redeemer? My number one Redeemer fan here, if you're listening, what about you? What about if you go out there and you get your friends together and you crew them up and you've got a top gunner and a bottom gunner? That's 4 size 5s. And one single Corsair rolls up on you and has more firepower than you do. How does that make you feel? Probably pretty bad. What about if they got 3 friends and then suddenly 3 Corsairs roll up on you and each one has more firepower than you and your 2 friends? That is why CIG has to understand the concept of multicrew and what people want. They have to understand 1 + 1 = 3. I think they can do it, and I think things like fire and damage control are essential to multicrew, but the juice has got to be worth the squeeze, and the multicrew has to perform before this is ever really worth it for players to do. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.